at with things. So I have now had 3 oily births. So I had my first daughter, she's now 6, and then I had twins. And yes, 2 labors, 2 everything. So I've been talking about this class for the whole 6 years, because basically the day that I had my daughter was when, and again, this was my first child, so I didn't know any different, but the midwives came to our birth and they said, this has been the calmest birth we've ever come to. What are you doing? What is this? And I'll talk a little bit about what happened, because it was a pretty funny story, but they both left with kids. So this kind of was the start of my business, because I didn't even know this was a thing. I just agreed to have an oily birth because my sister-in-law really wanted me to, and I was like, sure, never done this before. And it was just so noticeable to my midwives. So then fast forward, 3 babies, and then in probably April 2020, I checked in with my midwives, and I was just thinking about all these families that have probably been impacted by this journey right now. So either, for me, I went through IVF for all of my children. So the journey of that through a time of a global pandemic, and like how they're being supported and how people are going through that, all the way through to meetings with midwives, to whether home or hospital. And I wanted to check with my midwife to see, like, what can I do? And we've kind of continued to have this relationship where that people know me, she'll be like, Anne, go talk to Anne before we have this baby. And it's kind of, this has continued to happen. So anyway, I checked in with her and said, what can I do? Like, what do families need right now? And she said oils. Like she just said, just keep doing what you're doing, because the more support that people can have to go through this, the better. And I'll tell you kind of what that was like for me to have these oils and these people supporting me through it, because it did change the experience that I had, but also the experience that everyone else had around me. And my, from little things like for my partner knowing what to do to support me, to the nurses not having to hold me because somebody else was oiling me. And so they were like, thanks, this is great, because we can look at the monitors right now while you're doing that. So there was that relief, there was the emotional side, and then there was the people walking in the room going, oh, wow, like the unintended consequence of actually influencing and helping other people's day. Like, I had no idea that would happen, and that did, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But what I love about this is empowering women and families. And especially when I had my twins, I always think back to my grandmother that had twins as well. So my mom's a twin, and my mom's 81. So my grandmother had 2 babies in her kitchen, didn't know she was having twins, no support, nothing, right? And I channeled her to go through my experience, but I love empowering people to remember that we're built to do this. And this is it can be such a powerful experience if we support it and not fill it with fear or fill it with worry, and we kind of prepare ourselves the best way we can. So that's kind of how I approach it. And so I guess now I would like to just check in with you and see where you're at in your journey, and then we can kind of go from there. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what would be helpful to learn tonight?
I don't know anything about oils. I'm doing about 3 weeks. I've heard lots of good things about oils, and Gwen's been studying up on different oils and stuff too. So I don't know, just all the
Clariderm. You have been doing some things.
Yeah, that spray. Clariderm? Is that?
Yeah, Clariderm. she's had Clariderm for a month and a bit.
Right.
Yeah. February till now. So almost 2 months.
That would be, I know several people that their midwives would say that is their top recommendation. So you have like the best thing happening right now. So that's good. That's great. That's really good. And I'll talk about how we use that, and we still use it. I used it tonight on skin stuff tonight. So it's still used throughout the house all the time. Okay. So thank you for sharing that, because it kind of gives me context, and feel free to jump in with any questions that you have, because I take for granted that I have been doing this for so many years so if I say something you're like, I don't know what that is, feel free to jump in and stop me for sure. So I'm going to just start with the first little story, and I think that this is also how I kind of prepare, and how my midwife and I talked about it in terms of like preparing for best case, worst case scenario. Like, I think for me to condense this to an hour, it's like, okay, let's just talk about what we need to pack and what we need to have ready to support you. So I also have gone through supporting other people's births in person, like helping them, or I've met with couples, and we talked about how they, as a couple, they can support each other through the labor. I've supported surrogate relationships, so supporting a mom to support the surrogate, and like just all scenarios. So just imagine. The other thing I'll say is that sometimes I talk about pregnancy and the oils that would be chosen for that, and maybe like the cautionary piece around that, but just know that translates to baby or to nursing mama. So the same cautions and the same practice could happen. That's a fairly big time span. So if I don't say dilute oils, just assume I mean you should. So if I say use this oil, just know that any children under 5, nursing mama, pregnant mama, or newborn baby, like diluting is kind of the rule of thumb. So if I talk about an oil, just assume that I do mean that. Also, I'm a mama. I'm not a doctor. I have built a whole career helping people, and I've continued that with Young Living. So I no longer do my job. Young Living is my business. And I've just been able to keep on supporting families and people. And that's what I love to do. So with that said, I can't prescribe, cure, or diagnose, but I would be upset if somebody hadn't told me about this. And so I love talking about it, and I love, Emily has some really good points that she often will pull in too, because I think, I think we do appreciate empowering people, but also we find humor in these situations as well. So I'll kind of tell you some of the funny stories. So the beginning of this, when I mentioned that the midwives came to our house, that was not planned. We were supposed to be at the hospital. And so what we were doing, our plan was to labor as long as possible at home. And I didn't know it was my first baby. I didn't know like things were like happening. And I also had my friend in my mind that had like the worst experience in the world. And so in my mind, I just kept on telling myself, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. This is like, I have got to be okay with this. This is just the beginning. And when the midwife was called back to check on me, like we just thought it would be a check and then she might go home again. She heard me from outside and she said, this baby is coming now. And that like everything was in the truck. Everything was packed. And what we had been doing at home was the diffuser. And at that time, I only had one diffuser. So we walked from like room to room with the one diffuser. And I would kind of labor. I was really comfortable laboring over a couch, like kind of the arm of the couch. And I would just lean and stand and do that. And then we would kind of go back to the bathtub. So take the diffuser, go back to the bathtub, come back and forth. And anyway, she said, we're not going anywhere. We're having this baby here. And she's still looking around going like, it's so calm in here. What is going on? And so she started delegating. So it was to my mother-in-law, go cut the shower curtain down, and to my, sister-in-law, keep oiling, keep holding her, and she was getting things ready, and so the Valor is a key oil for labor, and through all of my labor situations, Valor is a key oil through that. And so my mother-in-law, who was so flustered and her job was to cut the shower curtain down, she was too frantic. She couldn't even do it. And so my sister-in-law went in and oiled her with Valor. It was like, take a breath. We're going to get through this. And then her next job was to get the hot water. And she never did. Like, she couldn't leave me, and she couldn't focus. And it was super cute. But mostly the house smelled like Valor. So one of the rules is when you're having a baby at home, that you have to have 2 midwives present. So they had to call a second one in, and basically I was holding until they called that second one in, and they did. And Romy came in, Griffin would say 2.5 pushes. So he said the first one, I was already in the contraction, so it didn't really count, but 2.5 pushes for Romy to be born. So it ended up being the most amazing experience, but I could not have been convinced to have a home birth. The truck was packed, and I remember the midwife saying, just in case, you might want to think about a home situation, maybe have some towels, and I was like, no, we're going to the hospital, it's totally fine. And so we ended up having such a beautiful experience that then when I was pregnant with my twins, I had a really hard time kind of flipping the switch to planning for a hospital, and which is weird because I was so comfortable with that idea the first time, but because it was so amazing. So I like this for you to think about too, because both are amazing. And I now recognize that you kind of have to be open to whatever happens, and that it'll all work out. And so I also like that I can tell you how to prepare for the hospital like I did. And I was following the exact same plan as the first time. That plan just didn't happen. But I'll just kind of tell you kind of how I came about all of this. So like I said, my sister-in-law, she was the one that was like, I really want to support you with an oily birth. And I was like, sure, whatever. I have no idea, but I knew that she was my calm person. I knew that she was my oiler. Her and I have a very close bond. She's very calm, and I knew that she would be the right person. So she couldn't come to the twins' birth. So then I had to kind of shift and figure out how this is going to work. And I also had a hard time, Griffin's great, he's a good support, but Aaron was just such a good support. So I just want to first, before I get into the hospital story, talk about the book that we based it on. So Gentle Babies is the book, and this is by a naturopath called Deborah Rayburn. And this is in our Facebook group. So as a member of our Oil Up team, everyone has an access to this PDF copy. There is everything in here. I looked at it today for somebody. It is still my go-to for under 5. So I do refer to this a lot. It's a great book. And since this has been around for a long time, since this was published, there's another new book called Betsy Bosom. And so now for the twins, I've looked at both, and I like the science of Betsy Bosom. I like her precautions. She's more thorough in the science of it. But when you get to the actual labor how-to, it mirrors exactly what Deborah Rayburn said. So in terms of there's no difference in terms of the how-to, and that is what we followed, and that is what I've helped other women through. I've had families texting me from the hospital, next steps or questions and it's still just exactly this kind of preparation and process. This is what I suggest to pack. So pack the diffuser with these, because no matter what, where you are, having a clean hospital room would be my wish for you. So I had the diffuser going for, our plan was about 20 minutes to have thieves going, clean the hospital room, and then you can shift it to whatever you'd like. For me, it was mostly Valor was the smell. So as soon as we came in there smelling great, and so now this is for the twins, midwife is there, but because of twins, there's actually quite a few other protocols that we had to meet and follow. So I also had a doctor. There were, because it's twins, there was lots of students coming through. So there's student midwives, student resident doctors. And when I actually gave birth, there was 18 people in the room.
God.
Not my family, like 18 other people, because each baby had a team and then the mama had a team. And again, the students, and there was like so many people. So I like it is interesting when you think about, my friend who loves to have all her friends there. So I've been to a birth where I was one of 5 girlfriends that were present, and then the mother-in-laws were there and everyone was there. Then I have the other spectrum of friend that she only wanted her partner, and that was it. And that would like, they might not even tell anyone they had a baby for a few days because they're so private. But the same preparation can apply because your partner can be the person doing this. Like it's simple, but it gives them something to do because otherwise. But what I like to do is prep you with what to pack, because that's the other change, is that people can't be running back and forth and giving you stuff and bringing things. So the more prepared you can be to be going into whatever situation. This also applies if it's not labor, if it's just planning for a surgery, it would be the same things that I would be recommending for people. Okay, so diffuser, 20 minutes, thieves, check. So then change it to what you want it to change it to. But at this point, you might encounter somebody that's scent sensitive. And I totally, I was that person. Like I was the manager. I had 100 staff and I would put up no scent signs. So like, I totally get that person's feelings and opinions. And, lots of medical professionals had prepped me for this, that there might be this person on staff during my labor. And sure enough, there was. So what I suggest is Ziploc bags one Ziploc with a white cloth, one with a different color cloth. For me, it was lavender, so that's why it's a lavender cloth. And then white was peppermint. So when I explain why I picked lavender peppermint, you might think of a different oil that would be your preference, but these were what I chose. And this is what a few women that I've also supported have done. And it's been interesting because when I've been present to their birth, I've now seen that they chose something different than I did. Like, everyone's a bit different, but the lavender would be your calming one. But having it already, some drops on it and in the Ziploc bag, then all you need to do is add some water, and all of a sudden it's a nice cool cloth for here or back here and feels so nice. Same with peppermint. Peppermint could be energizing. It could take away nauseous feelings. And so peppermint was my go-to, and it is probably my favorite oil anyway. But it was cooling back of the neck, on my head. I was breathing if I needed to. And that came in really handy. And again, like my friend that was in labor, she was like, and she was very vocal, which I appreciated because I'm not. When I'm stressed, I have a hard time communicating. So I really did need whoever was with me just make me feel better. Like I couldn't express what I wanted. Whereas my friend that I went to her labor, she was like, lavender, I need the lavender cloth. So I appreciate her communication skills. They were really good. But I just needed people just to do things around me. So that was, peppermint was the one that made me feel the best. Okay, so we had the thieves going for 20 minutes, switched to Valor in the diffuser. And the staff came in and said, we do have a scent sensitive person the floor tonight, and we aren't sure that you can continue diffusing. And I said, oh, that's okay. Okay. Can you, like, are they willing to have a conversation? You know, this is basically the smell that's going to be happening. Valor. This is the one that is the predominant smell all night long. Can you check if, you know, we could have a conversation with them? And they said, yeah. They went to her. She actually said, yeah, you know what? As soon as I walk by the room, I'll know. And she walked by, and then she came in and she said, this is totally fine. And so I know that we were really lucky, but I know that I probably would have just put Valor on the cloth and just kind of kept on doing the cloth plan. That was like worst case scenario, was just keep on with the cloth idea. But she, and I think that that's the piece that I've now grown to appreciate too, is quality. Like, I get that people are probably bringing in all kinds of scents and it's not okay. But when it's something that's actually going to help you and it's not going to hurt anyone, it's not going to give headaches, you're on the right track and it's going to be okay. And so that's what I found, was that willingness and openness, and then it went well. So I was really thankful for that.
Can I add to that? First of all, Emma, you might not know what Valor is. It's a blend, and it was blended. It was designed with the right kind of elements from different plants to allow you to push through. So it's like we call it brave oil here. My kids love Valor. To me, it smells a bit like blackberries, and it's a dark purple oil. And that was also my go-to during labor. I've had 5 children, and my last was my only oily pregnancy. I've had 2 kind of oily babies-ish, but my last one, he's a 1.5 years. And I think also he was a hospital birth, but my midwife was oiling me with Valor the whole time. And he was breech baby that turned, like he was turned. And then the morning of my labor, he flipped himself back. And we didn't know until, like, I was actually in the, having an ultrasound while I was in labor, like in contractions. I was being wheeled down the hall with no clothes on, just a little towel. And we stopped at an elevator, and along came this male nurse that I've known since I was a little kid. And I was like, hey, Gary, how? And I'm like in labor on this gurney with just like a towel to keep me private, and trying to like make small talk at the elevator was brutal. And then in labor, they realized, yes, he's like a breech. And so I was dealing with surgeons, and it was this whole, like, my water hadn't broken, and they thought maybe he's being choked by the cord, and that's why he can't break the water. I had 2 surgeons saying, like, we have canceled all surgery, we're waiting for you. And I was just in a panic because my husband was only going to be home for 10 days post baby, and I couldn't look after 5 children with a C-section and no family. And so I was in such a panic, and my midwife was so good and just trying to calm me and make me like wait till I knew my decision. And then she actually said, like, I was being pressured hardcore by the surgeons, like, hurry up and let's get you, because we've got a lineup of people. And then I had this other surgeon come in and give me his opinion. And I was just in such a panic, and I was crying. And then my midwife said, okay, Emily, we're just going to take 5 minutes. Where's your oil? And I can't believe I hadn't thought of that. And I was like, okay, like, get in my bag. Here's my Valor. She just started rolling it on my neck. She's like, just breathe, just like use your oil. And it was within 5 minutes of that I said, oh, I think my water just broke. Oh, this was like a game changer, like checking to make sure that it was my fluids. And they said, yes, it is. And then she like got me into my room, said, we're going to settle you in the room. The surgeon still wants you to deliver in the operating room. But immediately when I got there, it had been such a stressful few hours. My midwife's like, where's your diffuser? And I had thieves and orange in my diffuser. We have private rooms here in BC. So I had a private room, and I had my diffuser. Do you guys have private rooms too in Alberta? Okay. So she had my diffuser on, and then the surgeon came in. And this was remarkable. This is like the power of these oils, because they're not artificial. They're not gonna like actually upset somebody. I think our professionals really want you to be in your calmest state, because that's the safest for you and it's the safest for your delivery, and everybody wants a positive outcome. And so I was brought to my room, and within like maybe 5 minutes after being in my room, the surgeon came in to like get the, like, even though I'm about to deliver without a C-section, they still wanted me to do it in the operating room because that's procedure here in BC. And he took one look at me. I didn't even know he was there. And he went and spoke on my behalf to the pediatrician who is now involved, to say, I think she should labor in her room, because I've never seen her so calm. And the diffuser had only been going 5 minutes. Lights were low, diffuser was on. And they respected that because they could see that powerful shift in my body. I was suddenly in control. I was calm. The oils were working. And she looked at the name on the list and used to come to my gym classes. I used to teach group fitness, and she was a regular. She'd come on her lunch breaks and said to me, I heard weeks later when my baby was in the pediatric ward, she said, I was the one that let you labor in your room. And she had 4 students with her, and they were like, what? How come you would let her do something so awful and dangerous? And she said, well, I'm a bit of a cowboy. I do what I want. And I took one look at the name on the list of who was going to deliver, and I knew it was Emily, and I knew how important her oils were to her, and I wanted her to do it her way. And that was like surgeon, pediatrician coming on board with a mom, like empowering me to have the delivery that I wanted. My room was also full of 10 to 12 people for my delivery because of the nature of it, and everybody wanted to watch, because it's not that often that you get one of these deliveries, and it never in a room, a breech delivery, frank breech in a room. So there were so many people watching. But she said, like, she told me that watching me labor in my room, the way my body was meant to do it, like all natural, with my diffuser, said it was the most beautiful thing. And she said to me, I needed your delivery because I hadn't had positive breech birth deliveries in the last little while, and that they hadn't been positive. And so she said, I really needed to see that. That was so beautiful for me. And I was like, it was my midwife, my midwife that told me, get your oils. Then the surgeon that's like, whoa, this seems to have changed her. And then the pediatrician to say, we're going to let her do it this way. I was so empowered because I was honestly kind of nervous to bring my diffuser and bring all these things to a hospital setting. It's sure to like set up your home birth the way you want, but to be in a clinical setting where we're used to doing it their way, it was really empowering to see how they could see the effect on me and wanted it to go my way, because that would be the safest outcome for everyone. So I'm so glad for Valor. Valor's a must. And just for like rolling the, like as Anne said, what if they ask you to turn off your diffuser? At least it's already purified the air. Like it's done its job. 20 minutes with the thieves will purify the air for 2 hours. So plug it in and say sorry later. That's my idea. But I loved orange because I felt like that was really energizing and it was calming, and Christmas is just like the most peaceful time, and Christmas at orange and thieves kind of to me pair well to just be like safety of Christmas to me. So I loved, that was my diffuser blend. And Valor, during the whole delivery, my midwife just was up because there were so many other people there for the baby and for me, other professionals, that her only job was to oil me, and she just kept slathering on Valor the whole time.
I just love hearing people's experience, and like just seeing the effect on the medical team. That was great. And just know in the moment you're not paying attention to them. Like I didn't know there was 18 people. Like it was somebody told me that later. I had no clue. I was in my zone. But so when I mentioned before that I couldn't have my sister, she couldn't come to my twin birth. And so we had prepared my mother-in-law, my like nervous, frantic, lovely mother-in-law, and my husband to be the new Aaron. And it was really hard for me to just not have like that one calm person. So one of the other things I like to share is that, you know, there's oils, and then there's lots of other things too. So for me to, at the beginning of my pregnancy, to kind of hold the pregnancy, because I had such difficulty, and then at the end of my pregnancy I went for acupuncture. So I think that was a key factor into this. And then she gave me the pinpoints of where to press when I am in labor with my oils. So kind of doing the consultation with the professionals to kind of help me along the way. And then she shared an office with my chiropractor, who was that calm person that I was like, I wonder if she would come to my labor. Like I've known her now for 6 years. So she had been my chiropractor for prenatal. So I only see her when I'm pregnant, but she was my chiropractor for that piece. And she felt her job was to make a happy pelvis for me. So I do really suggest those two things too before labor. I think those are great things. But anyway, I asked my mother-in-law, I'm like, what do you think of me asking Marley to be at my birth? And she said, yes, that is the most beautiful person to have. So we did. And so she came. So she ended up like going to Megan's house that night, getting the book, canceling her appointments that she had because we were a planned, they don't let twins go past 37 weeks to the day. So we knew exactly how long, which was 3 days out. So she went, read the book, and was my partner for that Thursday or Friday. And so it was incredible. So what I got to do after this experience, and again, it could be anyone, could be your partner, but what was cool about having Marley for that moment was that, you know, a week later, 2 weeks later, I can't remember exactly, she came and debriefed it with me. And she was the one that talked about all the other medical professionals and how they were impacted. And it was really cool to have her kind of that medical side, seeing all that was going on. But also she was like, when Emily talked about the person that calmed me when I needed to, like when I kind of felt like it was getting really intense and I was about to lose control, she was kind of my go-to for like checking myself. And like, I think I've learned over the years too about that, like just taking time to take a few breaths and just try to get centered again, because it is an intense experience. And for me, there were times when I felt like I was losing control. The pain was getting quite intense. And that was usually when they were checking me when I had to lay down. And I kind of felt like I had lost control of my body whenever I had to lay down for them to check me. And I never had to do that at home. And that's one of the beauties of home, because they check you no matter where you are. But when I was in the hospital, I had to follow their protocol and lay down. And so taking those moments afterwards to regain and get back into whatever was comfortable for me. And for me, it was standing over top of the bed, and they just like raise the bed really high. So I'd like stand over top of it. And, but just find what's comfortable for you. And you do have a lot of power, like Emily's story and my situation, you do have a lot of power to be more comfortable and to move and to do what you need to do for your body. And and midwives are always very creative about how that can be possible for you as well. So the labor blend, this is a specific blend for like, now we're kind of talking about like things are getting intense at this point. So we don't pull the labor blend out until we're at that point. So when we're kind of, you know, things are ramping up, and the labor blend is, I just pre-made the roller so it was ready to go. You just fill the rest of the roller with a carrier. And this is a specific blend that kind of whoever the support person is. So for me, it was when I was the support to my friend, I just kind of kept on circulating around her body and doing it on her baby toes, her baby fingers, abdomen, and back. And just kind of kept on, and I would kind of do that in between contractions. and also doing Valor on the spine. And Valor, the roller is just really handy for that, Valor on the spine. And Valor on the back of the neck, I love, like, even for right now in you know, coming onto a presentation, like when we talk about Valor, it's courage in a bottle. And another cool story about Valor, my daughter actually has something called breath holding. She doesn't anymore, she's outgrown it, but it's when if you're in shock, you kind of hold your breath. And so when she was little, if she, like, as a toddler fell over or something like surprised her, she would hold her breath and pass out. And we recognized that if we diffused Valor at night, she didn't. So, and we found that, like, because we always diffused Valor, it's great for sleep. So we were diffusing it all the time, but then we moved to this house and we were just a bit lazy, like unpacking diffusers and stuff. And she started having spells again. So this is when she was 2.5 and she had gone through a stretch of not having them. And then 3 weeks later, we started diffusing it again for sleep when we unpacked everything, and she stopped again. And so we think it's about the confidence piece, and she could get through and find her words and find her emotions and speak through a situation. And so we didn't know it was going to impact her behavior, but it does. And it's also our go-to in our family. It's like literally, it's in my husband's truck, it's everywhere. But for any stress, anxiety, it's a great oil for that. So it's been a huge piece for our family. So Clariderm we've talked about. So this is phenomenal. So far we've talked about Valor, we've talked about the labor blend, and I'll get into why the labor blend and Clariderm are both very important. So Clariderm using to prep perinatum, and it could be a couple months to a couple weeks before, like whatever you are comfortable doing, but prepping, because what it can prevent and what it can help is not having tears. And so midwives, like, again, this is their top recommended because tears are common, right? But what I find is that if people are induced, or if there's other factors at play, and it could be just even encouraging labor a bit too early, that's when tears can happen, when our bodies aren't quite ready, right? So just trying to have our bodies as ready as possible. And with oils, what I see is the laboring part tends to be typical, like it tends to be normal and what other labors are like in terms of people not using oils. But the difference is the calm factor, and the big difference is the speed of the delivery. So the actual, like, nuts and bolts painful part is a lot shorter. So great, but this is where this is really important because it's faster. So having your body prepared for that speed is really important. And the shock, like Emily kind of touched on it, but the shock of the medical professionals that my babies were coming so fast. So I've now had the 3 babies in a total of 6 pushes, and the first twin, and kind of what Emily was talking about prepping, and the twins have to be also in the OR, like it's one of the rules, and I was supposed to be prepped with an epidural, might not be used, but I had to be prepped with it. And I sort of just missed all of those doors because they kept on checking me and saying, oh no, she's got lots of time, no, she's fine. But then all of a sudden it was game time and none of that could be done. So I went to the OR. I did deliver in the OR. I had both twins, and after both were born, the anesthesiologist like busted through the doors to start my epidural, but the twins were already born, which I'm afraid of needles. So I was like super fearful of that piece of the whole process. And so I was able to avoid it. But also I do recall the last moments before, like the doctor was about to deliver, like catch the baby, and he was slowly putting on his gloves with his back to me. And I could feel Griffin and myself and Marley all looking at him like, turn around, turn around. And sure enough, he slowly turned around and he was like, oh, and caught Taj. So Taj was Bo was one push, the first baby. And then Taj was 2 pushes 7 minutes later. And so that they were shocked. They had no idea it would be that quick. So I like that oils can really help with that part, but also the laboring part in the hours prior to that, just that emotional support and the effect that it had.
On the Clariderm spray, I'm so glad you have it. I have, as I said, 5. I always tear. That's just what happens with me. And I usually get small little paper cuts that are just really uncomfortable, more for using the washroom after, and if they could be stitched closed, that would be great. And after Daniel, my breech baby, I had been using Clariderm for about 2 months before. Every time I'd go pee, I would just spray myself and at the same time. And there was not a single tear, and he was like hips, shoulders, feet, heads, all folded. So if there was a time I would tear in my whole life, it would have been with him. And my midwife could see I was so exhausted, because he came quickly as well in about 8 minutes. She, after I'd rested a bit, she said, now I already had a look to see if there was anything I could stitch for you, but you were just so tired. I've got a flashlight now. Would it be okay if I had another look? And I was like, okay, yes, please. And she searched, and she's like, I can't even find a single thing that would make you more comfortable. There's not a single tear here. And I was like, it's the spray. And then the next morning, this was an evening thing. So the next morning there was a shift change, and the nurse came in and she said, so I just wanted you to know, it says on your chart that you've used the washroom and you've had a bowel movement and everything's okay. But I just want to urge you to keep using that perineal spray bottle that we give you for aftercare. And I said to her, I've been meaning to ask, where are those things? And she said, wait, on your chart, you've used the washroom 3 times and you didn't have a bottle. How come you weren't calling the nurse's station? Most moms would be in agony on the toilet and they would need the nurse to come. And I said, no, I use this spray. It just soothed the pain. That first night, I think was the most comfortable afterbirth that I'd ever felt, because it's got all these really good pain and healing oils in there. And I was so comfortable. And it was the very first baby where I didn't have to use padsicles, which are those frozen pads with witch hazel, and I would even add oils to them now, but there wasn't a single one of those that I needed after baby. And I never needed the spray bottle. Her mouth just dropped open. That it had been almost 12 hours since I'd had the baby and I hadn't been given a spray bottle yet. And I was like, it's this magic bottle full of unicorn tears. It's the greatest thing ever. And now I spray my face every night. I spray the kids when they fall down and have a scab that needs to heal. It's everything.
Sorry. Thank you so much for sharing it. The other thing that I like to have prepped is some sort of pain cream. So this one is frankincense, lavender, panaway. Frankincense, lavender, panaway. What else did I have in it? Yeah. And so this is something when I was prepping, a friend of mine and her husband, they had it a couple weeks before, because you start getting achy and sleep is more difficult, and I found my hips were really sore after I slept. And so you can kind of start trying it out and seeing if it's soothing you now, or maybe your husband or partner has a sore back. See if it works for them, because then you'll know if you want to add more drops or adjust in any way.
Recipe for that?
Yes. I will send it to you. I think it's in the Gentle Babies book too.
Oh.
But I pretty sure this is way too much. I just remember that it goes such a long way. So I think I would just do a quarter of a jar, or you could even do it in a roller and just add the drops that you're comfortable with. Like I think I did 30, 30, 30, something like that. But really this is probably way too much. It probably only a quarter, and 30, 30, 30 would be great for that. Yeah.
And is it coconut oil, or what's your...
This is coconut oil. Yeah. So you could do a roller with a fractionated coconut oil and the same sort of thing. I just like having like something to scoop and have good surface coverage. Just remember, you're going to be really slippery. You're going to be really oily and really slippery. Healing afterwards, the Clariderm is so important. The pain cream is helpful. And the most beautiful moment is the baby arrives and anointing with frankincense. It's just so special and so beautiful. So I love that moment. That's just a very.
What does that do?
Well,
what is that? Sorry.
That's okay. Frankincense has a huge biblical reference. So it could be for that reason, but it also could be grounding and just almost like protecting. Like I see it as an important piece to just start a baby with. So it's just a very powerful oil. It's a really special oil.
We also did the frankincense drop right on his head, and it was just so beautiful, and just big yawn after, and just like a really grounding, like it's an experience for them. And all the tree oils, you think about the roots going deep into the ground, and I feel like that's what it does to us emotionally. What a unexpected journey for the baby that never asked to leave the warm swimming pool that it was happily living in, and now there's bright lights everywhere. So just to give them that anointing and that just sense of steep emotional sturdiness, I felt like was beautiful as an experience compared to my other 4. I could just see the difference in my baby, and just he fell asleep like shortly after big yawn, fell asleep, and it was so peaceful and beautiful.
And I've supported people through having be back. So having such a brutal time the first time, and then having such a beautiful birth afterwards. And it's been remarkable. Like when I talk about the labor blend, I walked into a labor and delivery room to support a friend, and things had kind of been happening but had slowed down a little bit, and I walk in, everything's pretty calm. I start circulating her body with the labor blend, and the nurse said, whatever you're doing, the baby has just woke up again, like keep doing that. And so I didn't realize at this time that they actually, before I walked in the room, they had given her a 2-hour window, and they said that they were going to do it would be her second C-section. They were going to do her second C-section if she didn't have the baby. And that labor blend got things moving, and she was able to deliver naturally. And it was amazing. Like I'm so thankful to be a part of it. But her labor the first time was 25 hours before the C-section. So just like, whew. And then I have another story where my friend, her labor was progressing. It was her first time, and it was progressing so intense that she kind of it was just her and her partner, and she asked her partner, can you maybe like stop the labor blend for a bit because it's getting really intense, and everything slowed down. And so the nurses kind of had a chat with her, like, things have kind of slowed down again. So she was like, fine, start the labor blend again. So it's pretty remarkable what people see. Okay, so we've talked about aftercare. There's a couple things that I would just want to mention that were really helpful in the hospital, and then I want to open it up to questions if anyone has questions. So Ningxia Red. So when you're laboring and they're telling you not to eat anything, just know that this is such a great drink to have. This is great for that moment, like when things are getting intense and you're looking for something that's going to be refreshing but nourishing. Great for that. And I took the packs with me to the hospital, and then I had these delivered because I was drinking so much of it that I had a case delivered to the hospital. But this is immune boosting. This is helping with healing, helping with sleep, energy. It's antioxidant, gut health, like just kind of like everything you need. And then with the twins, we were on a 3-hour feeding cycle for both of them. So my husband would get up and make Ningxia spritzers, which are the best thing in the world and the most refreshing. And when you are a nursing mama, you're so thirsty. So just have somebody making you Ningxia spritzers all the time so that you're surviving. I highly recommend. V6, when I talk about diluting, I love how easy using, so V6 is 6 different vegetable oils. So it's that's what it is, a mixture of vegetable oils that are so nice. So it is great for rolling. It makes the roller roll easier. And it's just great way to take the thought out of how to dilute. 1 pump in your hand to 1 drop. Easy as that. And because that kind of in my mind is like 30-1. So that's easy. So 1 pump and then whatever drop you need for baby. So here's a couple examples of when that might be helpful, especially in the early days. Fennel. Fennel is great for milk production. And the way that I used it, there was a couple phases I went through. Yes. So I went through it right away in the hospital just to try to get the milk going. And what I did was after I would feed, so I would feed baby first, baby would be off of my body, and I would dilute, but I would put it like on the sides of my glands, kind of right here, to encourage, and I would be doing the massaging, doing all the tricks that they're showing at the hospital, just helping the milk production happen. And then down the road, maybe 2 months down the road, that's kind of when I needed like another pick-me-up. And so I would use it again. So it's great. It comes in handy, and there might be different phases that you'll want to have that available to you.
To the fennel?
Yes.
Okay, so Caden had gone through a growth spurt. Can't remember exactly when, but I only had to use it twice in the middle of the night after a feed, and I was good for like the whole rest of the week. It was that fast. And then I made a sample for a friend of mine who had a little one. She was going through her 3-month growth spurt. She only had to use it once, and it got her production that fast. And she actually lent hers to another friend who had just had a baby because her mother-in-law had been there, and she had gone through a stress thing and her milk production had gone down. And again, the friend only had to use it once, and the production came back, and she was like, oh my goodness. What I had noticed with fennel is you remember to drink a lot more water because you're producing a lot more milk, and you get really thirsty because you gotta drink more water.
And copaiba, so there's when you have the kit and you have the diffuser and you have all the oils, you have so many options available to you for kind of the everyday stuff. So a lot of the oils that I talk about are in the kit, but copaiba is one of them, and that one is key for teething. So on the outside of the jaw, or you can make a roller. So I just sent that to my cousin today. That was the one I was saying I was looking at, the Gentle Babies book again. A roller for outside, and it's so great. So my twins have all finished teething, and they're fine now. Like they're sleeping joyously, and they're sleeping with Northern Lights Black Spruce and the Owl diffuser, because it is the best thing in the world, because it is a sound machine and a nightlight and a diffuser. So it's like the ultimate mom hack because they share a room and they don't wake up each other, because there's that lovely waves or the rain is kind of their thing. And then there's a nightlight for when we're traveling, so it's great wherever we are. And then it's a diffuser too, so it's perfect. Okay, I think the last thing there's 3 more things. Do I have time for 3 more things? I don't want to keep you too long, but these are my 3 favorites, and I'll leave everything else on my tray. I literally take a tray around my house and just like scoop the things in every room that we use the most. But what I would say is going back to that point of preparing for a surgery or preparing for the hospital, if anyone's in this scenario, I love the Bon Voyage kit because it actually has everything that anyone would need to pack for the hospital. So it comes with shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, hand sanitizer, lip balm. You want lip balm afterwards because everything is dry. Body wash, a moisturizer, and this travel bag. So it's only $71, but it comes with all of that stuff. It's all natural. It's the first things that your baby is going to be exposed to, because your baby on your skin is exposed to whatever you're putting on your body. So I just think that having a natural option right away is the gift. And going through fertility issues myself, that was the shift for me to have that never happen to my kids, and just to have natural options right away. So my kids have only known Young Living, and I'm so thankful for that, because that has been kind of the catalyst for me. I don't want them to go through what I went through. My wipes. So I make my own wipes. Young Living sells baby wipes, so that is an option, but I love making them. These cost pennies, and I can share the recipe with you guys, but it's really, really easy. It's just paper towel. You can use cotton, reusable ones as well, but Young Living has a whole baby line. So it's the bath wash and a little bit of coconut oil. And so you can either use V6, like the vegetable oil, or actual coconut oil. That is what makes it soft. So it doesn't matter what vegetable oil you're using. I use the V6 and a little bit of baby wash. And then you put that in a bowl with hot water, and you just mix, whisk it. And then you pour that over paper towel. And so you just cut a paper towel in half, and that makes 2 batches. So one for diaper bag, one for house. And that makes diaper, and like literally pennies, like it's so much cheaper. And it just removes all the chemicals that are in diaper wipes. Again, you could do it with cotton cloths, and that would be fine too. I said there was 3 things. Oh, probably just the seedlings line. So I made reference to seedlings line. So there's the bath wash, there's the baby oil for massage oil, baby lotion, diaper cream. And what I find is, so we use the diaper cream all the time. It's great, but really I probably have the same tube for maybe a year, because I find that because we use natural products, we don't have skin irritations. So we don't have diaper rashes unless they eat like a lot of tomatoes and strawberries. That's like the only reason that they have a diaper rash. But what I've found is if I run out of wipes and I'm using a commercial wipe, they're gonna have an irritation. So I do think that there's another reason to not use commercial wipes. But So those are my top favorites. And now I would love to hear any questions or any comments, anything I missed, Emily. And I get pretty jazzed about this topic. So I'm so glad I was able to share with you guys.
I love your stories. I wish that my kids had all been oily, because just like you said, the one thing leads to the next, like they're touching your skin. And we with Daniel used a diaper that we thought was green. It's very well marketed to be green. And he burnt so badly on his bottom, all around his scrotum was like blistered. And I called in the company, and they immediately had this tag answer for me. And I knew within seconds, I'm not the first person to call in because of this issue. They immediately, there was no surprise, there was nothing. They just read me ingredients and promised me a refund. And I was so irritated. And I thought, I've been oily with Young Living, all natural, for 4 years. At the time, it was 3 years. And I am trying to, the one thing Young Living can't provide me are disposable diapers. And so I went with what was well marketed and got fooled by green marketing. And so it's just that situation was so upsetting. I thought, oh, it can't be the diaper. I went a week without, his skin cleared up, put one back on, and he was actually burnt, like blistered burnt. And I was horrified and just more grateful that I'm not struggling with what baby products to use on his skin, what is clean and natural and won't lead to those irritations is just so important. So thank you for all those wonderful stories. Emma, are you excited?
Nervous? Yeah, I'm very excited, but
You
no,
were made to do this. You were made to do this. And remember, low tones, low voice. So if you're like tense and you're going high, that squeezes everything closed. If you can go low and open, that will let everything out.
The best advice I had with that was with my third daughter, and it was, instead of calling it a contraction, they were just waves of welcoming, because with every wave I get closer to holding her or him. I didn't know what it was, and I just, the whole time I was visualizing, I wish I had oils, then I didn't, but just this idea that I'm not contracting and squeezing and holding, I'm like letting this wave wash right through my body to the shore. Actually, my husband wasn't even there. She was an early birth, so he was away at work. I was all alone with my midwife, and I was silent, nobody talking to me. I was just like letting these waves bring me closer to my baby, saying like to her, come on baby, it will be together soon, just keep coming, like let the waves go, let them through you, don't resist the waves. It's beautiful. Wish I could do it 10 more times.